So look, the first thing you gotta do is you gotta cut off all this dura, which takes some time. So that's the dura, right? So I cut it off of one hemisphere. So I cut it off there, and I had to tease it out from in here. So a few landmarks. The longitudinal fissure is there. The transverse fissure is right here. The tentorium was that dura sheet that was in there, and I had to tease that out. Now we'll look at the ventral aspect of the brain. So we'll turn it over. Okay, so here's anterior, there's posterior, there's the brain stem and the spinal cord. So we're looking for the cranial nerves. We'll start with the most anterior. So this thing is the olfactory bulb up here, this big, huge thing. So that's the beginning of cranial nerve 1. And it goes back to the track, which is here. So that's all cranial nerve 1, olfactory. Then this thing's sticking out here, big, thick nerve. That's the optic nerve. And so there's one here that's cut, and there's the other one sticking out. And they pass back here where they meet. And so what we're seeing right here, that's the optic chiasma. All right, so that's cranial nerve 2, optic nerve. And we pass back here a little bit, and there's this protrusion right there, and that's the pituitary gland. Okay, so the oculomotor nerve we're going to find up against the ventral surface of the brain, just beneath the pituitary gland. Now this big structure over here is actually the 3 branches of the trigeminal nerve, and it's got dura stuck to it so tightly that I usually don't try to cut it off, because when you do that, you just break the trigeminal nerve. So we'll go back and we'll talk about the trigeminal in a minute, but I'm mentioning that because you got to get this out of the way. I got to move that off to the side a little bit. All right, and there's the pituitary, and so if you can do that, you'll see that there's actually a very large nerve right here. I'll lift it up in a second. Yeah, that's a pretty big nerve right there. Can you see what I'm lifting up? Okay, that's the oculomotor nerve. It's just in a hard to find place. Now, that's number 3.
Is it on both sides?
It's on both sides. Yeah, I'm just showing you one side right now. Everything's repeated on the other side. So this is easy to see if you rip off the trigeminal nerve and you rip off the pituitary, but then you lose the landmark. So if you dissect your own, that's fine. Once these are off, it's easy to see, but I tried to leave it intact with the context. All right, so olfactory, optic, oculomotor, your 3 O's. Okay. Then after that, we get the 2 T's, trochlear and trigeminal. The trochlear one is the hardest one to find, not hardest, but difficult, because remember, that comes off from the back of the midbrain. So for that, we got to rotate it around and open up the transverse fissure a little bit. And we do that. This stuff in here, this is arachnoid mater, by the way. That's part of the meninges. Now there's a little one. You're going to be a little shocked when you see this. Okay, there's a little one right there. I'm going to cut the stuff around it, but there's a little. I'm going to get my hook under it. See what I'm lifting up right there? Can you see that? Okay, that's the trochlear nerve. And that comes from back by the tectum and wraps around. And usually, a lot of times when you take the dura off, you rip that one off. So that's 4. Now the trigeminal's massive, and its stump is right here. It comes out of the pons. And actually, I mean, if you look at that, this is really big. And I'm going to cut that off. And it'll just be the stump that's sticking out after I cut it off. All right. So all of this now is going to come off, because those are all the branches of the trigeminal nerve. We're just going to take that off. Got a little bit of dura still holding it on there. Okay. So those are the branches of the trigeminal nerve. But its root is right there. And that's really big. Okay. So that's your trigeminal nerve. So that's 5. Okay. So again, olfactory 1, optic 2, oculomotor, now you can see it more plainly. Oculomotor 3 right there. Trochlear here, 4. Trigeminal, 5. Okay. Then 6, the abducens. That's pretty easy. That comes off at the junction between the pons and the medulla. And it's right there. If I lift that up a little bit, see it sticking up? Okay, that's the abducens, and you can see it over here too. But they're all repeated on both sides. All right, so that's 6. Now we get to 7 and 8. 7 and 8, most of the time I cannot find. They come off right here. And I don't really see them there, but I think I can see them right here. Okay. There's 2 little stumps, and you can even see they're split. See, there's a division line right there. Can you see that? Very fine. So that should be 7 and 8 together. And a lot of times they just turn to mush, and I have a hard time finding those. So there's 7 and 8. Now we want to find 9 and 10, and this is pretty well preserved on this one. That's right here. See those little rootlets? Mm-hmm. And so, like I said, I can't really unambiguously identify 9 versus 10. this part should be 9 and this part should be 10, but I don't know the level of detail that would allow me to distinguish those rootlets. But they're 9 and 10 right there. Okay. And that leaves us 11 and 12. So 11 is the accessory nerve, and we can see the 2 sprouts of that here. One here, one there. And they form this little cord right there, and that's the accessory. So we got the cranial accessory and the spinal accessory, and they form this little bridge between the two. So that's all 11. And then 12, I actually have a little remnant of it right here. It's these little wispy fibers right there. And that is probably the first time I've gotten a brain out with all 12 of them intact. So you can actually see them. So then that's the hypoglossal. Okay? All right. Yeah. So